How does Anthony Albanese need to manage this Oval Office moment?
Well, Anthony Albanese should just be himself. He's just got to be upfront. He's got to be strong. He shouldn't suck up. That's a bad look for him politically. It's also a bad way to deal with Donald Trump, although that's how a lot of people try to deal with him. So he's just got to be strong and sincere and himself. I think he'll be fine.
You think he'll be fine because he'll approach it that way? You don't suspect he'll do much sucking up, which has always been the thing you warn against?
Yeah, well, I don't think he will. I really hope he doesn't, because it would be so inauthentic. And, you know, there is nothing more toxic in politics than inauthenticity. And to have Albo pretending to be all over Trump like a cheap suit, I think that'd be such a bad look, and I don't think it'd fool anyone. So he's just better off being courteous, friendly, respectful, but strong. I mean, Trump respects strength, and that's what you've got to manifest if you're trying to get things done with him.
And, you know, you've dealt with Trump face to face. He is unpredictable. He appears, you know, from my own observation, to have become even more unpredictable. Is that the kind of elephant in the room here, that we don't really know how Donald Trump may behave?
Well, you don't really know what he's going to do, but he is not an irrational actor. I know that a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but I've found him to be wild, erratic, colourful, difficult, but generally he's got a pretty good idea of his own self-interest, and he's got no reason to disrupt relations with Australia. I mean, you know, everyone in Australia is obsessed about the AUKUS deal and will we keep the AUKUS deal? Let me tell you, Patricia, the AUKUS deal is a fantastic deal for the Americans. It is a terrible deal for Australia. So there is no way Trump is going to walk away from it, because what does he get? He gets billions of dollars, which our government seems to take great pride in using to create American jobs. He gets billions of dollars. He gets a dockyard and a submarine base in Western Australia, and he doesn't have to sell Australia Virginia-class submarines if the US Navy can't spare them. And that's part of the deal. That's in the legislation. That's a risk the Australian government, I think very unwisely, took on. So Trump's able to say the AUKUS deal is fabulous, and if someone says, well, will you be able to sell us the submarines? He'll be able quite honestly to say, you've just got to wait to 2031 or 2032 for that. We just don't know whether we'll be able to spare them.
It's funny you say that, because if Donald Trump does say something positive about AUKUS, I think it will be largely read as positive for the Australian government. I know you take a different view, but it will be. So how do you reflect on that? That you think he will say something very positive about AUKUS tomorrow?
Patricia, I would be amazed if he didn't, right? Because the deal is so asymmetrical. It's so much in America's favour. But you see, there is this kind of simplistic, grovelling attitude in much of the Australian media that, you know, desperately wants to be loved. We're like the sort of an anxious boyfriend or girlfriend, desperately wanting confirmations of love. And they want Donald Trump to say something nice about AUKUS. Well, you know, I know Trump pretty well, and from his point of view, AUKUS is a fantastic deal for the United States. Whether it results in Australia ever getting any submarines is quite another question. I mean, it's a terrible deal for Australia. I don't think the Americans will be able to spare us any Virginia-class submarines. And, you know, that's not because they want to break the deal, it's because they don't have enough for themselves. And as to the British partnership, well, that's got a whole bunch of problems as well. But you see, just looking at it through Trump's very narrow, focused, transactional eyes, because he is focused on his interest and America's interest, AUKUS is a great deal. Whether if he had been the Australian Prime Minister, would he have done a deal like that? No way.
Okay.
I mean, if he has time to muse, he'll be musing to himself, I wonder why these Aussies did such a dumb deal.
Okay,
oh, well, that's their problem.
This deal you think he will say is great and say positive things about. How about some other issues like tariffs, for instance? Does our Prime Minister need to walk out of that Oval Office meeting with a deal on tariffs just like Keir Starmer was able to get?
Look, I think we've got a pretty good deal. We've got pretty low tariffs from the Americans. I think it's unlikely that Albanese will get a significant change to the tariffs. I mean, he should be arguing for parity with the UK, certainly for a reduction in steel tariffs. I mean, what he could be arguing for, and I don't know what he or Rudd have been putting to the Americans, but I would hope that they would have at least been floating the idea of getting a quota, a tariff-free quota for Australian steel, so that a percentage of our Australian steel and aluminium exports would go in tariff-free. But, the reality is we don't sell a lot to the Americans. They have a massive trade surplus with us. And, the tariffs are offensive, they're objectionable, they're unjust, they're in breach of the free trade agreement. But we'd only be hurting ourselves if we retaliated in kind. So we're in a very different... The challenge for us will be if Trump were to ask Albanese to line up in some kind of coalition against China.
Well, I was about to go there. I'm glad you've raised it. Malcolm Turnbull, former Prime Minister, is our guest this afternoon on Afternoon Briefing. So, Malcolm Turnbull, what happens if that does emerge? Because it is clearly something the Americans are pursuing.
Well, it depends what they ask for. I mean, obviously, China's got this, domination over rare earth processing and the manufacture of the permanent magnets that are such an important part of, everything that is high tech, which is just about everything. That's a lead. That's a position the Chinese have got because the Americans allowed that industry to just wither away in the United States. We have a lot of rare earths in Australia. We could process them here, but we would need to subsidise them, either with guaranteed contracts from customers like the Americans or just out of our own budget. But we're certainly in a position over time, this can't happen immediately, to provide real security and diversity of supply for rare earths. And I'm sure that will be a big feature, but it's not going to solve an immediate problem. But in terms of us taking steps against China economically, for example, with respect to any of our exports, no Australian government would countenance that. And look, in my time as Prime Minister, Trump never raised that with me, but some people close to him started muttering about how much, we enabled China by all of our exports. And, we shut that discussion down very quickly indeed.
Look, just on future tariffs potentially, pharmaceuticals are clearly a big one, our own pharmaceutical benefits scheme. Do you think it's likely, or should the Prime Minister, is a better question, raise that and get some guarantees around that?
Well, he should be saying to Trump, you have the best deal in the world on trade. You've got no tariffs, no quotas coming into Australia and a big surplus. We are giving you a big naval base in Western Australia. We're sending you billions of dollars and we have no guarantee of getting any submarines from you at all. You have about 150 of our best young sailors serving in your Navy and at our expense. So we're doing a lot for you, so you shouldn't be putting tariffs on anything that is Australian. Now, Albanese can say that, but does he have the steel to go on to the next sentence? Because when Trump says, yeah, so what? Does he have the steel to go on to the next sentence and say, well, if you don't cut us some slack on tariffs, then maybe we won't provide the base in Western Australia, or we won't provide the best base in Western Australia.
You think it should be linked, because many have argued it shouldn't be?
Well, look, of course it's all linked. I mean, Trump, economics and national security are always linked. I mean, your ability to defend yourself, for a start, is a function of your ability to pay for your armed forces, which is a function of your own GDP. I mean, Trump he always has all the cards on the table all the time. And so if you want to deal with him, in difficult situations like this, you've got to be able to do the same. But I don't think Albanese is prepared to go that far. Just
finally, and I bet you haven't missed this one, Barnaby Joyce thinking about One Nation, flirting with One Nation. Not quite an announcement, but he clearly is pretty upset with the Nationals. I remember, because I'm old enough, that the Nationals used to speak quite negatively about One Nation. There's been a big shift, I think, in politics. What do you make of what he's had to say?
Well, look, I mean, Barnaby and I have had a mixed history.
Yeah, you'd have to say that.
Caused me and my government a lot of grief. But he's been a pretty disruptive influence wherever he's been. I think there'll be mixed views about him leaving. Some people will say, well, that disrupts the Nationals. Others will say, well, it's better to have him out of the room. Will he be able to make a big difference with One Nation? I mean, certainly the Queensland Nationals, the LNP, have always been very anxious about being outflanked on the right. In fact, been more anxious about that than they are about, their political rivals on the left, like the Labor Party. So, maybe Barnaby plus One Nation would, make One Nation materially stronger. I just don't know. I think the challenge at the moment is that the non-Labor right of politics, what we used to call the centre right, it's not much centre left, I'm afraid, but what we used to call the centre right really needs to get their act together. I mean, Anthony Albanese is a very skillful politician, but the damage that his opponents are doing to themselves must make him wonder how he could be so lucky.